how to create some very interesting texture designs using pattern selections. Now I've got an image here, I'll put it in the description where you can download it if you want to use this one. And what you can do, you can use selection menu to create some very interesting selections which can be used as pattern sources. So go to there, select and colour range. Now you can see a lot of reds in there, so simply do that and you can get quite a complex selection. So that's, and obviously you could use some of the other selection tools. There's quite a few other selection tools and you can of course modify it. You've got smooth, feather, all those sort of things, outline, etc. So what you can do then is you can go to layer and new pattern layer from selection. Doesn't look like much has happened. Go to over here to the move tool and you've got your design there and you can see now of course it's not seamless, it's not going to be seamless, but when you've added lots of layers on top of each other, to be honest, it's very hard to see. So you've got that design there and you can sort of shrink it to quite a bit to give obviously a very good look of texture. Now you've got the underline still and I can remove that so you can still see there. I've got the underline thing, which I'm just going to add on top. Now what you can also do, you can go to down here to layers panel, so view, studio and layers. Go here, effects, and maybe add some depth to it. Just gives a bit more nice for the texture. So bevel and emboss, and I'm going to use inner. And you can see then you've got the lovely texture on top of that with that selection. Close. Now, of course, you could apply multiple ones, so you don't have to, you could go to, now this pattern is still editable, so you click there to the pattern, you can still see the design there, you can still change that. But you can also go to a layer and duplicate, and you can move that. You can rotate it, so you can have different, like that. Maybe change the angle, like that. And so on and so on. And also once you've finished, of course, you can always go to layer menu and you can merge visible. So it's all merged visible. Now obviously the pattern is still there, so you can remove those if you don't want those. So you've got a lot more texture there on that. But of course what you can do, you can always still do exactly the same as before. So select colour range. Maybe this time you could go for greens or maybe tonal, select midtones. You can see you can create very, very intense selection using that. And again, exactly the same as before, you can go to layer and new pattern layer from selection and resize, and you can see then you've got this really quite complex design now, pattern design. Actually probably pretty hard to see any seams in that. Well, what you can also do still again, you can go over here to effects and you can go and add bevel and emboss, and so you can add some depth to that. Bevel and emboss, I don't want that one, the inner, and I can change the angle there. And also you've got profile as well if you want to change those. And you also can modify. That's always a pity that the design you get just before it suddenly finishes off is much nicer than the actual. Anyway, close. Still, you can modify this design there. Now you can see you've got quite a lot of depth in there. Also, of course, I could have had some shadow as well, give even more depth. Now what you can do, again, layer and flatten visible. Now if I zoom in a bit into this, you can really see quite a lot. That's from the earlier design. Now you've got a lot of texture here. You've got a lot of sort of very random looking texture. Well, what you can now do is, of course, you can always, if you want it to be a texture file like black and white, of course, you can always go to layer and new adjustment layer and you go down to black and white. You can see your design there. And of course you can tweak that. So if you decide to bring out extra, and you can modify these. Obviously most of that is in the reds. So you can see that from the design there. You can tweak that. And right, close that. And of course, once you've decided that's what I want as my texture, which you could of course then save, so you can go to layer and you can merge visible again. So you've got your texture design there. which I think is quite a nice three-dimensional, very random looking background texture, which can be file and export, saved off to another document, or maybe used sort of on the backgrounds for something like distort and displace, etc. Those sort of things. Really great sort of texture design for that. And that's it. Just creating textures using the layer and pattern layer from selection. And all kinds of selections have been created. Obviously, you can also load selection from files as well, so that's even more useful, as well as other options here. Well, I hope you found this tutorial of interest. Always add new tutorials about Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, and many others. Also, please add some comments. Always appreciated. Obviously, maybe better ways of working this. Always happy to hear. Also, a dislike or like. Thank you much.